So this is for Jonghyuck Kim, and if I murdered your name, I'm really sorry. But looking at your stuff here, the first thing I would say right off the bat is that I like the idea, and I think it works to some extent. The issue that you have is that you're using kind of a bright focus to kind of pull the character, and so ultimately what's happening is as I look at this, my eye is drawn in two spots, and the first spot my eye is drawn in is basically kind of the goodbye, and the reason that is because of text. And so I follow the robot. I do look at the robot, but then I basically follow the beam of light up off the page. There's really not a lot holding me onto the page, because this is the brightest focal area right here. You know, I constantly want to draw my eye back there, and I want to look at this, but the problem is because the light is so bright, and then the words, I'm looking everything but this. Okay, and so ultimately you want to really sit down and kind of refine the idea and look at it from a standpoint of a illustration of kind of proportions. And so the first thing I would do is I would actually remove the goodbye, and you can always add it in later and kind of build out, but by removing the goodbye, let's go back to here. So by removing the goodbye, I'm just going to kind of give this character kind of the information it needs back to kind of work on it. And so you can see as I start removing the goodbye, the text itself kind of starts fading out, and I don't think about it as much. And so you can see here that by removing that text, because you always have to consider text to be part of an image, and oops, let me go back here. So as I remove the text, you gain more power in the control of your potential character. Okay, so this kind of helps it out as well. Now the next thing I would say is that ultimately, if you do want to have the text, put it at the bottom and frame the illustration so that it's more like a title, like the memes and stuff like that. So that helps out in that aspect right there. The other thing that you want to do is you want to kind of go in and adjust your color palette so that the robot is ultimately where you want to look. So I'm just going to add a screen here real quick. Excuse me. And by adding in the emphasis of, lower this a little bit, the emphasis of the sunlight kind of pouring onto the character here, all right, and that's really way too bright, but I just wanted to get a base in there, and then going through and adding like a level adjustment here, and let's kind of darken the background here a little bit, and kind of really kind of emphasize the background like so. And I realize it's probably not the color palette that you want, but then let's go in and kind of really sink in that idea. So by putting that character forward as, maybe like a spot of light, we can kind of draw around. And you can see, let's erase that, and you can see that spot of light really pushes me now to actually look at the character a lot more. And because I blocked out a lot of the bigger shapes, like the TV, and now the TV with the bush now kind of merges into one. You could probably go in and color palette this out. And I'm not saying change the color palette. I'm just saying emphasize what's most important. And so you can see here that we can blend some of this together a little bit more to give you a little bit more kind of emphasis. And that would give you kind of really what you're kind of trying to achieve is more focus on the robot than anything else. But as you can see, without that focus, everything kind of blends together. And one of the ways to check this out is always to, you can always add a black and white filter in there, and that will kind of show you that this character mixes too well with everything else. Whereas when we take that filter off and add in the additional kind of features, now I'm forcing that whole character to stand out a little bit more. And it doesn't need to be, it doesn't need to be a, kind of a big deal, but you can actually add in a lot of lighting solution to this character, and even add in, kind of interesting things, like I can add in a little bit of that light on top of this tree, and then go through and erase. Let's go a little bit bigger. We can erase out, branches. We can add in, the tree branches, kind of make that not so perfect. But by just adding a little texture, that will give you kind of a little bit more to draw the eye, a little bit more to kind of emphasize into that character. And so ultimately, ultimately, that's what you need to do is kind of pull out that character a little bit more from the background, so that it's not a character concept. Oops, I don't want to do that. I want to do this one. So here, when you look at the black and white, now you can see that the character pops out a little bit more than prior to the adjustments. All right? So I hope that helps out a little bit.